Hashem echad u'shmo echad, Hashem echad u'shmo echad, einoy milvadoy. Hashem echad u'shmo echad, Hashem echad u'shmo echad, einoy milvadoy.
You're on mute.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our webinar, and very special welcome to Francois. According to Jewish belief, or as we know, the custom is that when two Jewish people get together with something intoxicating, what do? We say l'chaim. Why do we say l'chaim, to life, and not mazel tov or cheers? And the reason is l'chaim means to life, because according to Jewish tradition, the fruit that Adam and Eve ate in the Garden of Eden, well, we don't know what it was. The Torah said it was a fruit. Kabbalistic commentary suggests that in fact it was a grape. And we know that up until the time of the flood, the grape was naturally intoxicating. So what they did on the first day of their creation, they had wine and they got drunk. That's Jewish belief. Adam and Eve got drunk on Friday afternoon. They were supposed to save the wine for Kiddush. They made Kiddush on Friday, they got drunk, and as a result of them partaking from the fruit of the tree of knowledge, God cursed the world that death would come into the world. Now, it's interesting to note that the curses that God cursed man and woman and the world with only came in much, much later at the time of the flood. Man did not die immediately, the snake did not lose its feet immediately, etc., etc. Therefore, when two Jews drink something intoxicating, what do we say? L'chaim, to life, not like what happened to Adam and Eve. Now, the true expression is l'chaim ulivracha, l'chaim, and you should be blessed. We just say l'chaim because it's quicker. Why do we say l'chaim ulivracha? L'chaim means you should be blessed because the Torah says when you drink something intoxicating, your secrets come out. And when your secrets come out, you should be good inside as you appear to be outside. Certainly in the month of Adar, the Gemara says, Mishenichnas Adar, marbim besimcha. When we enter into the month of Adar, we increase in happiness. And as we know, Purim, we have to say l'chaim. We have to drink something intoxicating. Now, to learn all about this and to live life to its fullest, because I think that's what it's all about, to live life to its fullest, we have a very special guest here. We have Francois Gonzalez, who's a serious winemaker, an internationally recognized winemaker, and he's going to go through with us different wines. He's a partner of Cabjewel Winery, beautiful kosher wines. But it's just such an honor to have you, Francois, and I'm looking so forward to this. So I'm going to pass over to you, and afterwards I'm going to pass over to Eddie Fagelin when you finish speaking, just to ask you one or two questions. So over to you, Francois.
Rabbi, that is fine. Thank you. Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for the opportunity that we have to do the tasting tonight with Cabjewel. So from everybody from Cabjewel, thank you very much. I think the Rabbi had the best solution to this webinar. He said that when I logged in or linked in, or how do you said it, that I must just speak for 2 minutes and then we drink for the rest of the hour. So I think that is still probably the best idea for the evening. Definitely not. We want to learn from you. So yeah, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background of Cabjewel. Cabjewel is a company that's a little bit in its infant shoes currently. So we are very excited. We are in the brink of our second harvest that is going to start next week. on the 16th of February. Not the 16th of February, that is more or less almost today or yesterday, but next week on Tuesday, we're going to start harvesting. So yeah, we are based in Paarl, and we are a little bit different from other wine companies, or not different, but there's companies that is similar to us in the sense of, not similar that we make kosher, but similar in the sense that we do not actually own any vineyards. So what we do is we go out through the whole country or the whole of Western Cape or the wine growing regions, and we go and select our pockets of grapes where we feel that those grapes are the best suited for that specific cultivar. So we will go and we will get our Sauvignon Blanc, for instance, from the cooler wine growing areas. We will get our Chenin Blanc from the Paarl area where it's a little bit hotter. And so we go and we pick the parcels all over the wine growing region. And we, like I said, we are based in Paarl. And then we bring those grapes to the cellar. And then we vinify there and make the wines according to kosher law. All of our wines is kosher for Passover and Muvashal. And we are currently, I think, the brand, that is the word that I'm looking for, that actually stocks the widest range of cultivars, I think, in kosher products. So we are running from a Gewürztraminer right through to a Shiraz, Pinotage, and I think there's a few exciting new comers that we will introduce to you a little bit later this year. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of background, and I think, like everything is if there's any questions, you're more than welcome to ask me through any time of this conversation. And even if you want to ask a question later on, you're more than welcome. If it's something about the industry in general, because there's a lot of talk about the industry due to the fact of prohibition and the bigger volumes, all that kind of stuff, you're also more than welcome to ask me. There's just a few things that I want to maybe address before we go into the season and the vineyards and how it's looking in terms of a quality year. So first of all, I think I also want to just mention all our partners in the sense that if you want to get hold of any Cabjewel wines, we are more or less in most of the checkers in the most relevant areas. We're in Kosher World, we're in the Sparse, we are available at Norman Goodfellas and all those places. And if you want to see where you can buy Cabjewel, you can just visit our website, and then you will see more or less all the outlets where we are available. And otherwise, if you can't find us in the store, then you can go to our online facilities and you can order online, and then we can deliver to you. So in terms of the 2021 harvest, I think we are very excited. It is not a very hot season that we had. We are currently about 9 to 10 days late in terms of the previous year. It is rather cool. In Paarl, we had 1 week where we touched 40 degrees Celsius. This week we are lower again in temperature, and we had a very good raining season. So the water tables are more or less saturated. The dams are full. We've got adequate water. So in terms of the run-up to the season, everything is actually looking very good. And now the pressure is on me as winemaker actually to make sure that what nature has given us, that I don't mess it up in the cellar. A lot of people actually ask me if we go through, or if we went through last week with a lot of heat, whether it would have damaged the grapes. And at the end of the day, a vineyard plant is a very tough plant. A vine is something that grows in your more difficult growing conditions. And there was a saying to say that the more difficulty you experience in life, the more character you develop. And that is the same with a vineyard also, is you don't want a vineyard to be, everything mustn't be too good. There mustn't be too much nutrients. There mustn't be too much water. There must just be enough. So it's still got to be a little bit of a struggle for that wine or that vine to survive. And then is where you find that you'll get the quality and the character coming through in the vine or in the grapes. So I'm just going to run through with you a little bit on the winemaking process. So the winemaking process that we follow is more or less a standard winemaking process. Over the years, this will be now my 23rd harvest. It will be my seventh kosher harvest, where I produce kosher wines with our maskiach. And so we've tweaked the process a little bit as we've gone, and each year is a learning process. So the winemaking processes in terms of kosher, in the process and the flow of things that we do, is more or less the same as in ordinary winemaking. The biggest difference is that in the beginning, we all know that the grapes and the machines and everything is handled by the maskiach. And as soon as we've come to a certain stage in the winemaking, we use a process of flash pasteurization. And there's certain things that winemakers just play very close to the chest. And one of those things in our life is actually when in the process we do the flash pasteurization. Because for us, it is absolutely that we maintain and we preserve the quality what nature gives us in the grapes. And then usually what we do is we try to manage that through bottling, and hopefully you'll experience it in the bottle. So for us this year, I think there's going to be a few new challenges for us. Things that we're going to add to our range this year is for the first time we will be producing a Sauvignon Blanc. We're going to release a Pinot Grigio also this year, and we're also looking at a Moscato. And one thing that I must maybe, it's difficult for me always to speak about non-alcoholic wines. For me, it's almost like sacrilege, but I understand that there's a market for it, and especially with prohibition nowadays, there's definitely a functionality for it. So we are definitely going to dip our fingers into a non-alcoholic kosher wine also. So this is the three newcomers that we are going to add to our range this year. And if all goes well, we will release them round about the end of May of this year in South Africa. It could be that it will be of a limited supply initially, due to the fact that I'm usually a person that's more on the cautious side. So I'd rather make a little bit less than more, but I'm sure that there will be enough that goes around. Then a few things before we go into the wine tasting and other things is, you might have seen that we had a few questions. I'm just going to show the bottle. I don't know if you can see it clearly. This is our grape juice, the Cabjewel still grape juice. You might have seen this product earlier, and initially it was a dark red with gold and a little bit of black in it. We just moved to a clear, a more clean label, and it is not a light version of the grape juice. So we found a lot of people that are actually asking us, but is it lower in sugar? Is it have we changed the juice that is in there? There's actually nothing changed in it. The only thing that we did is we just changed the label. It stands out a little bit more on shelf, and we feel it's a little bit of a clean label, and it looks a little bit nicer. The other thing is also, it's a very big misconception, and I get a lot of questions about this. This is our Cabjewel Rosé. Now, the rosé that you will see this year, what we're going to produce, is going to be a little bit more lighter in color. It's going to be more of a salmon color, almost like a blush onion skin. The biggest challenge that we usually get with these wines is when we release it just after vintage, you'll find that it's a very beautiful purple pink color. And as the year goes on, it starts maturing, and then it gets almost to I don't know, I think unleaded petrol nowadays is green, but when I was young, you would get a 93 octane petrol, leaded still. and it almost looks like that petrol thing. And this is not something that is negative on the product. It is just a natural aging process. So you'll find that there's phenols in the wine, that is the color pigments. And as the wine age, you'll find that those color pigments change more to orange also. And I think you would have noticed it on red wines also. So when you start drinking red wines that is young, you'll see that on the rims of the wine and on the glass, it's deep purple, red colors. And when it's matured for 5 to 10 years, you'll find that it starts more becoming like your clay bricks, a little bit of orange hues coming in. So it's the same at the end of the day as red wine. We make it from Shiraz grapes, which is obviously a red wine cultivar. So we can't expect this wine to behave different than a red cultivar. So the wine pigments will also oxidize and change color over time. Then the other thing is also that I just would like to recommend for you is red wines. A lot of people say that you can't drink. This is the Cabjewel Pinotage that I've got here. A lot of people tell you that you can't drink red wine in the summer. A lot of people, what I usually do, and what a lot of people actually also do, is if you take into consideration, and you've heard it probably a lot, that you say that the European conditions is much cooler than what we are experiencing in South Africa. So the average temperature in your European countries is around about 18, 22 degrees Celsius. So what I do a lot of times is in the evenings, if it's a warm evening and I'm really in the mood for a red wine, then I will take one block of ice, drop it in the wine, and it will be absolutely amazing if you just see what happens to that wine actually when it just cools down, opens up. Otherwise, you can just put that wine in your fridge a little bit, take a little bit of the heat out of the wine, as we would call it, cool it not down to 10 degrees Celsius, but cool it down to around about 18, 19 degrees Celsius. And then it is very, very, very great to drink, and in summer times also. Now, this year also, we're going to do a few things in terms of the wine making and the styles. I believe in continuous improvement. So we must always try to achieve a better quality product from one vintage to the next vintage. I also feel that one needs to keep the product interesting. So one thing that is for certain is that the quality aspects of the product must be there. So the quality attributes must be there. It must be a good wine, a clean wine. It must it must show the cultivars and the characteristics of the specific cultivars. But what we're going to do this year is we're going to add a bit of layers to the wine. So we're going to make the wine a little bit more, not complex, not more serious, but just put something else also in the wine, in the way that we're going to make it, to keep it interesting, to give somebody, when you taste the wines, you must actually think, wow, this is now great, but why is it different from the previous year, and what has changed? And what we're going to try and do is we're going to make, especially our white wines, a little bit more fruit driven. The alcohols of our white wines are running around about 12 volume percent, and around about 11.5 volume percent. So we can just going to up that with about 0.5% to 12.5 on our Chardonnays, maybe a little bit towards 13. Chenin definitely more towards 12.5. And the idea behind it is still to get your optimum ripeness. So there is certain ratios between sugar and acid that is an indication for you of whether you're going to make a good quality wine or not. So that is one of the factors that we also use. So we're going to add a little bit of layers in there, and by blending also certain cultivars into it, and just give that second thing in the back that's going to make the wine interesting. The same with red wines. The red wines, we've played with oak in the past. We're going to look at different oak combinations, but again, it is not something that when you taste the wines that you're going to chew on oak. It is something where it is going to give you a nuance in the back again. You probably won't even know that the wine is oaked, but it is just going to give you that something else that you think, yeah, that is something that wasn't there yet last time, and it makes the wine interesting and very drinkable. So yeah, I think I've talked now for about 21 minutes. My throat is starting to get dry. So I think we're going to start with the wines. First of all, I don't know, Rabbi, maybe how we're going to work it. I've got 5 wines with me. So it's just, I've got the Cabjewel Chardonnay, Cabjewel Rosé with me. I've got the Shiraz, the Pinotage, and the Cab with me. And we can run through it. But the one thing, people, that you must understand is I'm a firm believer, and my father-in-law, he usually mocks me a lot about it, and he will come to me with a glass and he will say, but do you smell the fynbos, or do you smell the old man's socks, or whatever. Fine. So the one thing that I'm not going to do is I'm not going to tell you that you've got to smell this and you've got to do that, because my perception of how I perceive guava, it is totally different of how other people might perceive the smell of guava or the smell of chocolate. And so it is actually, at the end of the day, it's for the end consumer to decide this is what is smelled, to make the connection with that. And I think it's everybody's prerogative to have a view regarding a wine. You see too much that when you're on wine tastings, that somebody will tell something in front of the room, and then everybody will more or less say, oh, okay, I smell that, I agree with that. But if you actually sometimes look at chefs, I find that they are much more critical of each other, in the sense that even if 3 or 4 people around the table with food taste different things and taste certain flavors and depth and fullness of flavors, if they don't agree, they will tell each other. And it's not wrong to disagree, because a wine that's going to be, for me, an exceptional wine can be a very plonky wine for somebody else. So it's all about perception. And I think, thank God that he created us as individuals, and that we've got everybody's got his own mind, and everyone can form its own opinion about a wine. Hopefully you'll enjoy our Cabjewel wines. Obviously, for me, it's an awesome wine range, awesome wines, drink it a lot. So yeah, I think it's going to be difficult for you to convince me that it's not a good wine. But hopefully everybody is on consensus regarding that. So the first wine that I've got here is the Cabjewel Chardonnay. Now, the Cabjewel Chardonnay, the grapes comes from the Paarl area. What we did is, this year, we're going to make the Chardonnay from 2 different regions. So this year, the Chardonnay is going to still come from the Paarl area, but we're going to get a cooler climate Chardonnay also that we're going to blend in with this. So what you're going to find is the wine is probably, this year, we're going to aim for a little bit higher alcohol, like I said, a little bit more fruit driven. And then the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to leave the wine a little bit on its lease. So it's something that I think it's autolysis or cell autolysis. I can't even pronounce it. But in layman's terms, what happens is the yeast cells breaks open and some of the proteins get released, and then you get a more smoother and a little bit more buttery kind of characters on the wine. So the Chardonnay that we've produced is, like I said, it is something, we don't want people to write books about it. It's something that you can enjoy everyday drinking, and what is easy accessible. So it is not a serious food wine. And that is also something, people, that I just want to bring out in the open, is there's no wrong pairing with wine. If you want to drink a Chardonnay with a steak, you do it. If you want to drink a red wine with fish, you do it. Because at the end of the day, it is what's working for you as an individual. There's a lot of times with food pairings in restaurants, then it's something totally else. That is where the chef wants to express certain characteristics within his food, where it's complemented by the wine. But at the end of the day, at your home, you enjoy the wine, and if you want to drink and eat it with whatever, you're more than welcome. So there is no wrong about it. And you'll also find that what we do sometimes is that there is a little bit of a description on the back of the label, But that is just to give you a little bit of guidance. But it's not to say that if you don't smell that or don't agree with it, that you're wrong. You've got to make up your own opinion. So yeah, the Chardonnay, the Chenin is also more, I don't have it with me tonight, but the Chenin is also the same style as the Chardonnay. And this year we're also going to do it just a little bit different, where we also got a hot and a cool climate component. And then we're going to blend those components together, and we're going to see that it's hopefully a little bit more fruit driven, a little bit more pronounced acid, but still very accessible. The wine that I'm actually opening now is the Cabjewel Rosé. The Cabjewel Rosé, what we do there is made of Shiraz grapes. We blend in a small component of white cultivars in there, and that is just to make the color a little bit lighter. And then also we want a little bit of natural, a little bit of natural acidity to the wine. The other thing is that I also just want to maybe bring to your attention, you'll see that on my cork or on my corkscrew, we use a very specific cork, and you will see that these corks aren't, it doesn't always look like all the other natural corks. It looks also almost like a little bit of cork bits that is stuck together. That is what we call a technical cork. So with these corks, you can't get cork taint in the wine. And cork taint is that when you smell the wine, it smells almost like wet cardboard, or what they call wet dog, and that is where there is taint in the wine. So again, this year we're going to keep, I think, our recipe is that we base our rosé on Shiraz, and I think that is something that works. We get the rosé or the Shiraz from the Durbanville wine growing region, and yeah, so it's usually something that is very light, usually with alcohol of around 12.5. We run this wine with a little bit of residual sugar, so it's got about 6 grams of residual sugar. So you can still call it dry, and the perception is dry, but it's just very elegant and smooth and accessible. And all of these wines, if you look at the whites and the rosés, we usually try to move them within 3 years of harvest. And the red wines, everything between 5 to 7 years of maturity. So yeah, the rosés is also something that's very much liked by the female crowd. But if you are a Uberman who is in zinc with his female part, it's always a good thing to enjoy it with for men also. Then the red wine that we're going to do is, what I'm opening now is Pinotage. Pinotage is grown here in the Paarl area. I think that for Pinotage and Shiraz, I think the Paarl is actually exceptional. You've got your granite shale soils here. It is usually your cultivars that is more used to heat, specifically your own cultivars. So it's something that is very good in this area. Both the Pinotage and the Shiraz that we use for our wines are bush wines, and they are more or less now about 8 to 12 years old, the vineyards. And again, the Pinotage, I had the other day a tasting with a group of Americans, and it's always interesting for me to hear all the comments. And so yeah, it's an interesting wine. I think there's deep berry flavors, your plums and stuff. And now I'm falling into my own trap where I'm telling you with what to perceive and smell in the glass. But the idea with the red wines and all the red wines that we make is that you actually must be able to drink it within the year. So what we will try as a company is we try not to release a red wine within the specific year that we make the wine. But sometimes due to good demand, it does happen that we have to do that. And that's why we are making it in a style where if we need to do it, then it's easily accessible by the public. All the red wines are more or less around about 13.5 to 14% in alcohol. And you will find that this is different from the regions in Europe, in those places where the alcohol tends to be lower. And the reason for that is due to our high heat in the Paarl area. So you'll find that you've got to leave the grapes on the vine much longer so that it can get maturity. And that's why it usually got a little bit of higher alcohol in it. But around about 13.5 to 14, just also something interesting. You can always look at a glass, and if you swirl it like it, and you look at the side of the glasses, you'll find that there's this tears running down. So that is an indication of alcohol. And the more tears is on the glass, usually the higher the alcohol. So I must say this 2019 Pinotage is drinking well.
Francois, just briefly, the difference between the red wines that we've got here. I've got the Cab, the Pinotage, and for somebody who's a real novice, and the Shiraz.
Yep.
When you drink them, I know you said you could drink them at any time, etc., whenever you feel, but what are the differences in taste? What should you expect?
You can always expect that you'll find that of those three that you mentioned now, your cabs are usually your more tannic wines. So that is usually the wines that you tend to keep longer so that the tannins can becomes more soft and more easily accessible. So what I would usually do is I would specifically now I would probably go for 2019 cab due to the fact that it's probably going to be softer now. You'll find that your Pinotage and your Shiraz is usually much softer, much more accessible. And most of the biggest reason for that is in terms of your Shiraz, you'll find that your berry is a little bit bigger. And in terms of your Pinotage, also in correlation to your cab. So you'll find that the extraction is a little bit lower in your Pinotage and in the Shiraz. And what we also do is we usually don't finish fermentation on the skins. We pull it off a little bit earlier so that there's not that big extraction. So I would usually go a Pinotage and a Shiraz is also something that you can drink just as is. A Cab is for me a little bit more of a food wine, but it's also something that you can just enjoy on your own without any food. But Merlot is for me also the same as the Cab. You've got to be very careful there that your tannins are ripe. I know my business partner, I drove him up the walls this year due to the fact that we were around about 4 to 5 months out of stock on the Merlot. And I just felt that the wine was not ready yet. And in terms of the tannin structure, so we only bottled that wine about 3 weeks ago, and it's only going into the market now. I don't know if that answered your question, Rabbi.
Good.
So yeah, like I said, I don't actually want too much talk about the wines in terms of styles and what you need to taste and smell. I would rather take a few questions and maybe try and answer it and give you more clarity on a few things, Rabbi.
If anybody has any questions, please put them on the Q&A. If not, I'm going to pass over to Eli Faglin now, who's a big fan of your wine, and he's going to be asking you 1 or 2 questions.
Okay. Good evening.
How are you?
No, can't complain on your side.
L'chaim.
Same to you. L'chaim.
You mentioned earlier, actually, that your father-in-law would come around and ask you your opinion and start putting these drinks in your face. I've got to be honest, I have a little bit of the same thing because the rabbi is my father-in-law, and often he'll come and say, Eli, come, let's have a drink. Let's say l'chaim. So
yeah.
we have a similar story.
No, it is. And the thing is he usually jokes about it. But the reality is we are different people, and everybody experiences it in a different manner.
Hey, I enjoy drink, but most people want to just hold back. But get that little push, I'm good to go. Anyway, there's a few common questions on wine that I'm sure you've heard before that I want to ask. Number one, a lot of people recommend opening the wine, not your whites and your rosés, but more your reds, especially your Cab Savs. Opening it up an hour or 2 before, or even more, let it breathe, pour it into a decanter, really shake it up, really open it up. How important is that?
I think it is very important, especially with the older wine. But I think what is the most important thing that you actually mentioned is there's no sense in when I opened this bottle to pull a cork and to leave the bottle just as this on shelf and now to think that the wine is breathing. If you're not going to decant the wine, you don't necessarily have to shake it. But usually what I do is you just freely pour the wine into a decanter and then you leave it.
How long? How long would you leave it for once it's in the decanter?
It depends. Sometimes I can't help myself and I'll drink it after 10 minutes. And sometimes if I can behave, I'll leave it for an hour.
So if you were in a behaving mood or you weren't drinking that day, the ideal time, you're meant to open it up, pour it into a decanter and leave it for an hour. Is that the ideal?
Yeah, it depends also. So it depends from cultivar. Usually a cab I will keep a little bit longer. But again, my rule of thumb is the older the vintage, the longer I will keep it. But definitely
so
not more than an hour.
This just applies to your dry reds, not to anything else.
No, you can, any wine, in terms that is, any wine for me, even if it's a white wine that has been in a bottle for 5, 7, 10 years, I think you must let it breathe a little bit so that you can just get to its original state.
Just popping the cork and letting it sit there count, or you have to decant?
No. For me, so what I usually do is if I don't have a decanter, I go to my wife's cake mixer, and I will take the glass bowl underneath the cake mixture and I will just put it in there. Or I'll take a glass salad bowl and I chuck it in there. That is just as good as a decanter.
So it just has to go into anything with a wide opening just to let it all open up.
Yeah. But like I said, this is to ask this now to breathe is to push you into a pond and to ask you to breathe through a straw. It's just not the same.
Okay. With obviously you mentioned earlier that for kosher wine you have to do the flash pasteurization.
Pasteurization, yes.
There's a lot of different opinions. People say that ruins the wine. Some people say it doesn't ruin the wine. What are your thoughts on that process changing the actual wine?
I think it's a two-step approach. I think if you looked at kosher wines in South Africa, and you don't even have to go back very long. So, for instance, you go back 7.5 to 10 years ago, you will find that the guys would have gone and they would have harvested the grapes, they would have destemmed it, and then they would have taken the juice and the skins, and they would have heated that to 86 or 85 degrees Celsius, and then they would have cooled down. So what would happen there is you almost get a cooked effect, like making jam. So fortunately for us, technology has moved on quite a bit over the past 7.5 to 10 years. So flash pasteurization is a process where we take the wine up to a degree of 87 degrees Celsius. We keep it there for a very small period of time, and then we bring it down again to normal temperature. So again, and that is what I said previously.
The actual alcohol content or quality of the wine during that process?
No, that is what I said previously. That is the thing that we tweaked quite a bit and worked on quite a bit. And the timing of when you do that in the wine making process are very important. And that is something that is unfortunately staying between me and my masgiach on when we are doing it. But I can promise you, I've made wines very long ago, not long ago, but a few years ago, where we made Muvishal wines and non-Muvishal wines, and that the people couldn't differentiate between the two. So with the technology that is nowadays available, I would firmly believe that it's not detrimental on quality. Maybe if we were 10 or 12 years in the past, I would say that it would have had definitely an impact.
Okay, that's good to know, because that really it's always an issue that's brought up with when you talk about Muvishal wine.
I think it's a perception that needs to be broken. There's a lot of things in life that change and technology change, and with that things becomes better. But the problem is there's still this perception in certain people's mind that due to the fact that it's Muvishal, in the past it was not that good. Now they think that it's still the same, but it is not.
Okay. We'll just have one more drink before the last question.
Just by the way, in rating of wines, in price range, just as an ignorant question, not understanding wine well, this is reasonably priced. your wine?
Yeah, I think what we try and do is, Rabbi, is we try to make it affordable for everybody. It's something that is very important for us as a company. That we probably could have come into the market at 140, 150 rand a bottle, as a lot of our competitors have done. But for us, it is actually to bring joy to the end consumer and to make it accessible for everybody. We don't want it to be an elite type of drink. It must be accessible and enjoyed by everybody. That is the most important thing for us.
Are you exporting the wine at all?
Yeah, we are exporting the wines. So we are exporting around about in the rest of Africa. We are already into Europe. We've exported a little bit into Australia. We're trying our best to get into the States, and hopefully we will be there by the end of the year. But we definitely are exporting. We are also, I don't know if your listeners know, but we are also the owners of the Kleine Draken brand. So Kleine Draken that you've seen all the years is now also under our wings, and we produce it with a Cabjewel.
As its own brand, Kleine Draken.
Yeah, we produce it as it was always in the South African market on its own, Kleine Draken. So we've taken it over, and we are going to go on with the Kleine Draken range. There you'll find that it's more your sweet wines. So we've got a semi-sweet white, a semi-sweet red. We've got a condition in a grape juice also in there. So there's more your red blends and your sweeter wines. While in our Cabjewel wines, we are differentiating on single cultivars, more dry palate, and a little bit more serious than the Kleine Draken.
Do you have a non-kosher range as well?
We are not carrying a non-kosher range at this moment, but it's not necessarily to say that we're not going to do it in future. But our main focus are for now. We want to be established as if you talk about kosher in South Africa, you must talk about Cabjewel. So we are definitely not going to take our focus off that. So before we haven't reached that milestone, we will definitely not go into the non-kosher segments. So for us, is like I said, is we want to be the go-to for kosher in South Africa and in the world. So wherever in the world that people talk kosher, they must talk Cabjewel. So before we haven't reached that, we're definitely not going to focus on something else.
Okay, one more question someone just asked is they say, what's your opinion on all the histamines that are known to be in the grapes of wine that have these different side effects? Has that come up in discussion before with you?
Not really. I think a lot of things that is for us more important is actually, if you look at grapes, the grapes are natural. For us, it's more about the pesticides and the spraying agents that the people use. And that is more or less why people also get allergic reactions to it. So what we try and do is we make sure that our producers, our quality producers, that they don't spray in excessive amounts. And what we also do is there's a certain withholding periods before we start harvest. And what we also do is we test the grapes and the juice for pesticides or heavy metals or copper or anything before we start making the wine. So we make sure that there's nothing else in that product that what nature has given us. And that is one thing that is for us very important, that we try to make the product as natural as possible. The product is also suitable for vegans. So there's no dairy or plant, animal-based products in our wines or used in our wines.
Could be considered
so we
organic?
try to make it as natural as possible.
Could the wine be considered organic?
No, the wine, unfortunately, at this moment, is not organic. We have partnered up with a producer in South Africa that produces organic grapes. So that might be a next step in the 2022 vintage, where we start releasing also an organic range. But that's a total different ballgame. There's a little bit of a certification that we've got to go through. But that is definitely something that we can put on the cards for the future. due to the fact that we've partnered up with the right producers that can supply us the right product for us.
Okay, thank you. And for the last question that's come through, do you personally think that the second harvest about to come through is going to be much better than the first harvest that's on the shelves now?
For sure. For us, like I said, it is, for me, it's a process of continuous improvement. So there's definitely going to be a step up. The one thing that I requested my business partner also is, and that we decided as a company, is that we're also going to start writing in these wines for competitions where it stands next to commercial products, so that the people can see that in quality it stands up to any other product. And the whole idea is continuous improvement, where we put every year something better in the product. But for us, the most important thing is we mustn't move away from our consumer base. So it's a tricky thing. You got to keep there where your end consumer is happy with the product, but where there is continuous improvement in the product.
Okay.
Francois, I'm sure by now you know that wine is used to every religious experience.
Yeah.
At a wedding, Friday night, Sabbath, when Sabbath comes in, when Sabbath goes out, when a festival comes in, when a festival goes out.
Yeah.
Wine brings joy. By divine providence, God has put you and Sion, your partner, into the wine business, which brings joy.
Yeah.
So I don't know where the last 45 minutes went, but merit of you bringing joy and helping us with what we need to serve God. May God give you and your family, and Sion, you and your family, just joy in every way, and you should be just so successful.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. But I must say also, I just love making the product. So hopefully you can experience that also in the product.
And I just have one more question for you. We would like to do this again in a few weeks because there are one or two people that we want to get on with us just to ask you a few questions. We actually expressed interest to do that.
Yeah, it's fine.
Thank you very much. And then, Sion, thank you for organizing it. Guys, I'm sorry we kept you a bit. We're a little bit over time, but thank you. And, we've got to just finish.
L'chaim, Rabbi. Thank you very much again. And thank you for the opportunity.
You've got to finish it.
Okay, I'll do it.